Welcome to Super Shay Gaming Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about all things gaming. I am the Super Shay alongside my tag team partners,
CoolDan1211
and
ACMS Gaming.
And today we are continuing our console series with the N64, the Nintendo 64. It was a home video console developed by Nintendo, released on June 23rd, 1996 in Japan, September 29th, 1996 in North America, and March 1st, 1997 in Europe and Australia.
Welcome to Australia, mate.
And it was the last major home console to use cartridges as its primary storage format until the more recently released Nintendo Switch. So, getting into a little bit about the N64, it was a fun console system, as Nintendo is famous for making. They had some really, really good games, though their game quantity was far less than the previous iterations of Nintendo gaming consoles. The N64 had a total of 388 games.
I'm pretty sure the reason to this was actually because this is their first time going the 3D, so a lot of money was spent just making models and stuff.
Well, there was a lot that went into it. One thing was they were going for quality versus quantity, and that played a lot into it. But for comparison, the Super NES got 1,755 games, and the NES got 716 Western releases, that's over here in North America, plus over 1,000 in Japan. So that is a huge drop-off to reach 388.
Well, to be fair, this is also a huge experiment with risk, so it could have been entirely possible that at some point it could have bombed and they would be completely out of business. But they didn't, so let's see what ended up happening in their catalog.
The considerably smaller Nintendo 64 game library has been attributed by some to be the controversial decision not to adopt the CD-ROM and programming difficulties for its complex architecture.
Yeah. And that was part of Yamauchi's strategy announced during a speech at the N64's November 1995 unveiling. Nintendo would be restricting the number of games produced for the Nintendo 64 so that developers would focus on higher quality instead of quantity, as I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the, this gaming system was, it was celebrated. It was acclaimed, and it widely sold games, had huge numbers. 3 of the top 5 best-selling games in the US for December of 1996 were N64 games. Both of the remaining 2 were Super NES games. So, in 1996, Nintendo was still king. And Super Mario 64 was the best-selling console game of its generation, with 11 million units sold, beating out Gran Turismo for the PlayStation, which had 10.85 million, and another epic game, Final Fantasy VII, which sold 9.72 million.
Now, nowadays, this is actually the first time Final Fantasy kind of went into 3D. But this was technically the first time where Final Fantasy would actually go onto a console like the Nintendo 64.
And the N64 beat out its competition for the time that it was out. The game of Super Mario 64 also received much praise from critics and helped to pioneer three-dimensional control schemes. because it was one of the first 3D games ever sold.
This is my second favorite console.
GoldenEye 007 was an important evolution in the first-person shooter and has been named one of the greatest in its genre. And then, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, set the standard for future 3D action-adventure games and is considered by many to be one of the greatest games ever made.
Now, fun fact. The Nintendo 64's release of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and was actually the first time ever where Nintendo technically reused an asset. And this was the lettering that would be seen on the star statue that many people have actually read as L is Real 2401. And ironically enough, 24 years and a month later, we found Luigi.
That's for Mario 64, right?
Yeah, but this is the first time where they reused that asset.
Huh. The most graphically demanding Nintendo 64 games on larger 32 or 64 megabyte cartridges are among the most advanced and detailed of 32- and 64-bit platforms. To maximize the hardware, developers created custom microcode. Nintendo 64 games running on custom microcode benefit from much higher polygon counts and more advanced lighting, animations, physics, and AI routines than its competition, Clunker's Bad Fur Day.
And Conker's
Conker's
Bad Fur Day is arguably the pinnacle of its generation, combining multicolored real-time lighting that illuminates each area to real-time shadowing and detailed texturing replete with a full in-game facial animation system.
Now, this is also technically Nintendo's first M-rated game. I say technically because there might have been some on the Nintendo Entertainment System and the SNES.
And the N64 was capable of executing many more advanced and complex rendering techniques than its competitors. It's the first home console to feature trilinear filtering to smooth textures, which contrasted with Saturn and PlayStation, because they used nearest neighbor interpolation and produced more pixelated textures. Overall, however, the results of the Nintendo cartridge system were mixed. So they were debating the CD-ROM versus the cartridge, and Nintendo decided to go with the cartridge, which had some downfalls, but in the end, I feel like it really worked out for Nintendo.
To be honest, I think it actually worked out for them because it's harder to get a ROM from a cartridge onto a computer than a CD. Because you got CD-ROM players that can be put onto computers.
Well, and CD-ROMs ended up taking over the entirety of the industry. After that, CD-ROMs became the standard.
And guess what? Nintendo's still running cartridges nowadays.
Yeah, they went back to it with the Nintendo Switch. A decision that I really like, in the fact that the other two consoles are currently going disc or download versions, and it seems like they're even trying to get rid of the discs so that people just have to download the games. But I like having that physical cartridge because you can continue to play that game no matter what. No bug or virus or corrupt data is going to stop you from being able to play that game.
Now, funny enough, Here's a fun fact, but Nintendo has actually used cartridges ever since the Nintendo DS, and they've stuck with cartridges ever since, so really they're not going back to cartridges, they're just going back to what made them popular to begin with.
Also, according to some stuff, the GameCube, Wii, and Wii U all used discs.
That is actually a confirmed fact, however, it's kind of irrelevant at the moment because we're on the Nintendo 64.
Granted, the controller is like a M employing a thumbstick in the center. Her Popular Electronics called it its shape
Evocative.
of some alien spaceship.
Now, here's a fun fact. Now, this is actually from my own personal ideas, but I think Nintendo was actually accommodating for her games that didn't use the control stick. However, because all the games use the control stick, its design kind of became ironic.
Well, what they were saying is that the separate grips allowed for different hand positions for various game types. So depending on the type of game you were playing, you could use it in different manners.
Now, in the end, and this kind of ended up as a ironic failure of the control design, but eventually we got the design that we all know and love from the GameCube.
And the N64 had several accessories, which included the Rumble Pack, that was standard, and the Transfer Pack.
The Rumble Pack was for games that needed Rumble to exist.
Well, actually, here's the funny part, but the Rumble Pack actually wasn't introduced until games like Majora's Mask or Star Fox.
Or Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong.
Now, we talked about one of the companies that was developing for Nintendo on our last podcast about the Super Nintendo. The company's name was Rare. And following the Super NES, Rare was bought and started developing for Microsoft's Xbox Live Arcade service.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
One exception, however, Donkey Kong 64. And Donkey Kong 64 released in April of 2015 on the Wii U Virtual Console, as Nintendo retained the rights to the Donkey Kong games.
Now, Donkey Kong 64 was actually a very buggy game. However, Rare actually designed for this. Whenever the game would lag, the characters would actually speed up to make it look like that the game has never lagged in its life.
Nintendo also released a peripheral platform called 64 DD, where DD stands for disk drive, connecting to the expansion slot at the bottom of the system. The 64 DD turns the Nintendo 64 console into an internet appliance, a multimedia workstation, and an expanded gaming platform.
And it was an absolute flop.
Yeah, it was. It did not do well. It wasn't what people wanted.
I'm guessing it only sold like a couple thousand units.
I don't have the numbers on it, but it was not very popular.
Yeah. Alright, so moving on. To illustrate the fundamental significance of the 64DD to all game development at Nintendo, lead developer
Shigesato Itoi
said, I came up with a lot of ideas because of the 64DD. All things started with the 64DD. There are so many ideas I wouldn't have been allowed to come up with if we didn't have the 64DD.
Shigeru Miyamoto concluded, almost every new project for the N64 is based on the 64DD. We'll make the game on a cartridge first, then add the technology we've cultivated to finish it up as a full-out 64DD game.
The iQue player.
The IQ Player was a handheld TV game Nintendo 64 system that released only in China on November 17, 2003, after China banned video game consoles. Ouch, that hurts. The games that were released in the IQ Player's lifetime: Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Mario Kart 64, Wave Race 64, Star Fox 64, Yoshi's Story, Paper Mario, Super Smash Bros., F-Zero X, Dr. Mario 64, Excitebike 64, Sin and Punishment, Custom Robo, and Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing!
Now, to get into a few of those games, Super Mario 64, one of the best Mario games ever released.
One of the best games in history of gaming.
That was actually beaten out by The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, but Super Mario 64 was Mario's first ever jump into 3D, pun intended, you may laugh. Now, Super Mario 64's main goal: collect 70 stars to fight Bowser at the top of the castle. Well, but the main story goes Mario gets a letter from Princess Peach inviting him over for cake. Yay! But once Mario got there, it was strangely quiet. He was met by a Lakitu who explained that nobody's really come out of the castle ever since they walked in. So Mario walks in and he hears Bowser's voice. He's telling him that nobody's home and that he should scram. Wahahaha. And so Mario talked to a nearby Toad and said that everyone was trapped inside of the walls of the castle. Oh, and that's where Mario's journey begins.
Interesting.
And it was an incredibly fun game. At the time, I was a little disillusioned with it because it was so different from like the side scrollers and all the previous Mario games that I had become accustomed to, that I was kind of silently protesting by not playing much. But over the course of time, when I went back and played it later, I saw the genius behind it, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I loved everything they changed. The 3D aspect of it was phenomenal, and by and large, it was clearly ahead of its time.
Now, this is actually where the Mario series splits into two different adventures. First, we got the Super Mario Brothers. There's the 2D side-scrollers that you all know and love, and the Super Mario series. It's the 3D adventures where you can long jump, backflip, punch Goombas, kick them, or dive into them. You can do anything in the Super Mario series, and you aren't restricted to do two directions.
So now we move on to the critical reception. The Nintendo 64 received acclaim from critics. Reviewers praised the console's advanced 3D graphics and gameplay, while criticizing the lack of games on G4 Tech TV's filter. And Nintendo 64 voted up to number 1 by registered users.
And mostly that was because of the innovation involved in the N64. The N64 was probably the most innovative system in its time frame. Yes, the PlayStation was out and they were using disc games. Loading times for them were extraordinarily long. We'll get more into that when we get into our PlayStation series and Xbox series and all that. But the N64 was a marvel for the time that it was released.
Now, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This is without a doubt the most popular video game in history. It was a game that was split into two different parts, both of which you could actually switch through, and you even had to do so for specific story elements.
And it still had the same basic premise as in Link coming to the aid of Princess Zelda.
Except, here's where we actually get into the interesting part. Link started out as a child.
Right.
And he lived in a forest called Kokiri Forest. Because if Kokiri sounds familiar, that's because they're technically the Koroks.
Right. And this is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that the adventure was not found in Hyrule, in that particular area. Hyrule was a part of it, but it wasn't the first spot that you woke up in.
Correct. Like, this is actually the first game to make that little premise. Well, technically not. I mean, in A Link to the Past had Link waking up in his house, which is technically a different part of Hyrule, but...
It was still in Hyrule.
Yeah. But Link actually ended up being an outcast amongst the Kokiri. He never had a fairy. That was until the Great Deku Tree sent Navi to accompany him on his journey to, I guess, defeat Ganon. Well, not Ganon, but Ganondorf, which this is actually his first appearance, by the way.
That is correct. Ganondorf was first found in this game. Prior to this, it was just Ganon, the wizard Ganon.
It was a wizard?
Yes.
Now, Ganondorf is the first ever Gerudo male. Well, and the legend goes, the first Gerudo male will always be the king. So he ended up becoming king of the Gerudo.
And this was a little, like, I don't want to say it was the darkest of Zelda games.
That's how it goes with Twilight Princess.
Right, that's what I was getting to. Twilight Princess actually was the darkest of the games, but this was kind of the prelude to that.
Because it leads into Majora's Mask, which is said to be one of the darkest. But it's not as dark as Twilight Princess, which is actually the only teen-rated Zelda game.
Really?
Yeah.
And in February 1996, Next Generation magazine called the Nintendo Ultra 64 the best kept secret in video games and the world's most powerful game machine. It called the system's November 24th, 1995 unveiling at Shoshinkai the most anticipated video gaming event of the 90s, possibly of all time.
Anticipated?
Yes, basically what that means is people were looking forward to it.
Now, a little fun fact. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time shares the same engine as Super Mario 64. Yeah, that actually is a known fact. They use the same engine, which is why they have some of the same textures. First, the more you know.
And Los Angeles Times called the system quite simply the fastest, most graceful game machine on the market.
That wasn't until the Nintendo GameCube.
Its form factor was described as small, light, and built for heavy play by kids, unlike the relatively fragile Sega Saturn, which ended up being a complete flop for Sega.
And here's another known fact, but that title eventually went on to the Nintendo DS, which was made a few years after.
But a wonderful gaming system. Electronic Gaming Monthly editors gave the Nintendo 64 scores of 8, 7, 7.5, and 9.
Now, to actually get a little bit of info, Rare actually developed a few games for the Nintendo 64 besides Donkey Kong 64. Banjo-Kazooie.
Banjo-Kazooie, I remember that game. It was so fun, and it was so different.
Now, unlike other collectathons, this one actually had a story and actually had had a reason for all the stuff that you were collecting. And Banjo's sister ended up being taken by the ugly witch, whose name I forget.
And Nintendo, while they had a great system and a lot of good developing, they also had a few minor issues within that time frame. Nintendo's efforts to attain dominance in the key 1997 holiday shopping season were hurt by game delays. 5 high-profile Nintendo games slated for release by Christmas of 1997, which, by the way, were The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Quest, Yoshi's Story, and Major League Baseball featuring Ken Griffey Jr. were delayed until 1998.
Conker's Quest was eventually renamed to Conker's Bad Fur Day because that was the prototype name.
And Diddy Kong Racing was announced at the last minute in an effort to somewhat fill those gaps.
And that game didn't do so well, but how about we get onto a game that caused the most controversy amongst players?
Go right ahead.
Mario Party.
Oh.
Mario Party. The first board game, video game of its time.
Now, I have gotten up because this is going to be a serious talk. But you can't see it because this is a podcast, not a video.
Oh,
Everybody drink.
Alrighty, so Mario Party. This game series spans across, I'd say, 14 different games split across many different systems. Now, Mario Party's 1 through 3 are the main problem causers here. The simple notation of rotating the darn control stick, because during this time we didn't have the button mash feature that everyone would know about.
I know.
So, most of the mini games that required you to use the control stick, this caused a bunch of controversy in the known world of Splinters.
Can I explain how it looked?
No, because everyone knows what rotating the control stick is. Because we live in a world where we all have control sticks.
No, I'm talking about Splinters.
Basically, they were just they were actually the destroyed skin that was on your hand, and
It hurt.
and it caused a lot of players pain. Nintendo actually had to issue a warning to not rotate the disc so hard with the palm of your hand. And for those who did end up getting those splinters, they got gloves as compensation to who actually, continue using their hand as they spin the control stick.
Yeah. Specially made gloves were made for it, and then I believe eventually the third-party gloves were made for Gap.
Well, now let's get on to why I mentioned Mario Party. Mario Party is a game series that spans across many different consoles. The first 3 we have are Mario Parties 1 through 3. In Mario Party 1, it just acts as a normal everyday life with Mario and his friends. However, they're all fighting in amongst each other to see who the superstar really is. So Toad comes along and tells them, why don't we have a party to decide who the superstar is? And everyone else agreed, and they all rush towards the pipe to start their dream adventure to become the superstar. But Bowser is up to his no-good nasty schemes, and he plans to sabotage the players by overcharging them for items that only cost 5 coins.
Now, a lot of people took this game as a Monopoly knockoff.
Except it wasn't.
Yeah, except that it really wasn't. It was similar, but it was not a knockoff. It had so many other features to it that you can't really compare it to a game of Monopoly.
Now, let me show you, not show you, but tell you how it's different.
This isn't a video, it's a podcast.
Take a drink, folks. And as you can see, he tried to do some ASMR, but I think it failed.
Me too.
Alrighty, so Mario Party. What makes it so different from Monopoly? Well, first off, you're not on a square board. all the boards have their own different amounts of spaces and different tracks that you can go on. And all the characters actually dressed up. At least in Mario Party 2, but it was actually pretty interesting. And all the characters who dressed up in different outfits that accommodated towards anything that they were doing, whether they were in space, on a desert, or traveling an island, or even just adventuring in the jungle. Oh, but here's what makes it different. When you land on a space, you don't buy it. Instead, you get coins. Every blue space gives you free coins with a chance of there being a hidden block. Now, there's one hidden block per playthrough, and this hidden block has a chance of either containing 20 coins or just outright giving you a star, which, by the way, stars are what you have to collect to gain an advantage over the other players.
And the one with the most stars at the end of the game wins.
Well, there's also chances where it just comes down to you having more coins than everyone else, since you might not even get a star by the time the game ends.
Right, and as the game progressed, they ended up adding in the feature that at the end of the game, they have surprise stars.
These are called bonus stars.
Yeah, bonus stars for specific things that you did within said game.
Bonus stars!
I don't think
what
they
are
were
they?
in-
Okay, so... I'm talking here, but... Bonus stars. What are they? Bonus stars are actually these stars that are given to you at the end of the game for performing three simple tasks. Task number 1. And minigame star. This is pretty much what they would call how many coins did you get from every minigame? Now, to get this minigame star, you have to complete the most minigames possible and get the most coins out of them. Happening star. Or what are happenings? These are the green spaces that you can find all over the board that have a little question mark. With these question mark spaces, you end up making something happen. If you land on more of these spaces than anyone else in the game, you get the minigame star. Now, there's one other bonus star, but I'm literally searching up a video on these bonus stars.
And over the course of time, there have been numerous versions of what bonus stars were, and they have kind of randomized per each game which ones they're going to use. You know, some of them are for winning the most mini games. Some of them are for having the most coins.
Yes, coin star. This is actually the third and final bonus star in Mario Party. At least up until 6 or 7, where they added more bonus stars. Award to whomever held the greatest number of coins at any time during gameplay. Hey, the best way to get this coin star is to also take part in getting the minigame star as well, because it's awarded to whomever collected the greatest amount of coins in certain types of minigames altogether. Now, Mario Party is actually known for the iconic meme ruining your friendships.
Much like most of the board games. Board games in general, they will ruin families, ruin friendships. Yeah, it just starts wars.
Oh yeah, I definitely know that.
Alrighty, so Mario Party 2. Mario and his friends were going over to Party Tower. I think that's what it's called. I haven't explored the story in a long time, but Bowser decided to interfere and take over the many different worlds that this tower supported. And so Mario and his friends had to go and beat Bowser to save the Party Tower and eventually become the Superstars. No, that's a different story. So, what happens in this? This game is very similar to the others. You got free bonus stars, Coin Star, Happening Star, and Minigame Star. However, things are different. Mario and his friends dress up. The only times where they don't dress up are when they're in neutral zones or they end up somewhere else. Now, the minigame star was actually changed a little bit in this one. And it's awards to whomever collected the greatest amount of coins in standard minigames. 4-player minigames, 2 versus 2 minigames, and 1 versus 3 minigames. Dual minigames and Bowser minigames did not count. Now, which, by the way, Bowser minigames were actually introduced in this one. In this title, I believe. Now, how would these happen? If you land on a Bowser space, there was a chance that Bowser would end up making you do a Bowser minigame, which whoever loses all their coins. At least, I think. Now, these Bowser minigames were incredibly tough because they favored the person in last place. If you were in last place, you probably didn't have a lot to lose. Now, allow me to explain Bowser Spaces, because they all work very similar to one another, except for in Mario Party 8. So here's what could happen. If you land on a Bowser space, there's a chance for him to either take 10 coins, take 20 coins, take all of your coins, take a star, or take 2 stars. And there was always at least one time where a Bowser minigame was actually the optional in this list, or you would get a fake option, like get 1,000 coins or get 100 stars. Instead of giving these to you, they'll just run away, meaning you've avoided your punishment. For now.
And it was an interesting feature into the game. It kind of kept it fresh and kept it new.
Mario Party Free. This title was actually one of the best in the series. The minigames are fun, and it actually gave you the option to have more than one item in your inventory. Yes, in the previous 2 titles, you could only have one item, and that was it. So, Mario Party Free. What is different about this game? Well, you got new characters to play as. You got Daisy and Waluigi, who were eventually added to the party.
Ooh, Waluigi.
In this game, and the story is as follows. One of these special stars have actually appeared and is challenging everyone to a huge party. The goal was to be the superstar to eventually fight him off and see who this special star really is. So, in this game, and there are actually unique features added for every board. In the first board, which I actually don't know, but I'll get into things real quick. Heck, I've actually watched a lot of these Mario Party videos, and it's hard to remember everything. But the special features are that every board has a mechanic. In some boards, you could have an intersection that if too many players are on it, you are forced away into a corner, or to go around the long way. In some, you had multiple star spaces, and you had to figure out which one was the real one.
Oh no.
But you could also end up landing on a happening space, which could send you to the complete other side of the map. In some, the intersections were decided by a button press to see if you would get sent your way or sent in the opposite direction. And it is a big game changer if I just remembered. Chance Time! Chance Time is a special event and where you could completely change the tables of the game. And each Chance Time is technically different than the last.
Where you could, like, steal a star from someone else.
or steal all of their stars, or even steal all of their coins. Heck, you could even do an entire status swap where you swap coins and stars. You could change the tides of the game if you land on chance time. But this can also favor other people as well, so you had to be careful with what you choose.
Like fourth place player.
That's just about everything in terms of Mario Party for Nintendo 64.
And then there's one of your former favorite games that first made its appearance on the N64.
Oh!
Paper Mario. Paper
Now-
Mario came out in the year 2000. It's a role-playing game developed by Intelligent Systems and published by Nintendo for the N64 home video game console.
Paper Mario, one of the glitchiest games on Nintendo 64.
Really?
No, I'm not joking here. It actually is one of the buggiest games on Nintendo 64 for all the good reasons.
Paper Mario is set in the Mushroom Kingdom as the protagonist Mario tries to rescue Princess Peach from Bowser, as usual, who has imprisoned the 7 star spirits,
Now
lifted her castle into the sky, and has defeated Mario after stealing the Star Rod from Star Haven and making himself invincible.
Now, here's the irony. The Star Spirits have actually appeared in one of the future titles of Mario Party. So they actually do have a 3D appearance. Appearance? Appearance. Yes, appearance.
Here.
To save the Mushroom Kingdom, rescue Peach, get the castle back, and defeat Bowser, Mario must locate the Star Spirits, who can negate the effects of the stolen Star Rod by defeating Bowser's minions guarding the Star Spirits. The player controls Mario and a number of partners to solve puzzles in the game's overworld and defeat enemies in a turn-based battle system.
Now, personally, I never really liked how difficult the final boss was, but I was also extremely underleveled because I usually tried to skip on the enemy battles. I was a scared kid back then.
Who is it?
Did you know that Nintendo planned to have Square, which is now Square Enix, develop Paper Mario?
Well, actually, surprisingly, no. But I actually did hear that they did have some, I guess, they had a good impression on the developers who did make Paper Mario.
Yeah, the reason that Square Enix did not make it is because they were busy making Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation at the time.
Now, Square, and Nintendo actually have a great history with each other.
Intelligent Systems developed the game instead of the game received acclaim, being praised for its concept, battle system, and graphics, and was rated the 63rd best game made on a Nintendo system in Nintendo's Power's Top 200 Games list in 2006. It was followed by a series of sequels starting with Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door for the GameCube
We'll get into
in
that later, but
2004.
they were literally one number off from making it the 64 best game. Ah.
Anxiety hits hard now.
Right?
Okay, so Paper Mario, what do I know about it? I know too much. Okay, so first off, with Paper Mario, you play as Mario. Well, not Mario, he's Paper Mario, as the title suggests. Now, everyone in this paper-fied version of the Mushroom Kingdom actually has their own unique set of dialogue that changes chapter by chapter, so there's a lot of data being used up by just the characters alone. They also have their own little AIs to help them move randomly around on the map in a set pattern. And however, whichever way they go is decided randomly by a random number generator, which I will now hear everybody refer to as RNG.
And after Bowser lifted the castle, Mario is thrown away from the castle in the sky and lands in the Goomba village, where he is aided by Goombario.
Now, this is technically a pun off of the name Mario. Oh, and Goomba merged together.
And they make their way to Shooting Star Summit, where the weakened 7-star spirits request Mario to find them in order to stop Bowser's invincibility.
Now, Bowser's invincibility is because he wishes to be stronger than Mario, and as a result, he ends up becoming stronger than Mario. But this wish can be negated, and if you actually choose the Star Spirits option. However, this will also use up Mario's turn because, as Nintendo, well, the programmers then program it to where they're using that move specifically would give Mario another turn. But this is okay because you also have your partner to deal damage in case if you can't.
Another incredibly fun game that was created by Nintendo based on their staple, Mario. Paper Mario was a fantastic game, other than the fact that it was kind of glitchy, had a bunch of bugs to it.
Now, these bugs were actually used in a very good manner. So, one of the bugs is loading zone storage, in which if you jump on a loading zone and then start jumping immediately after, well, actually, if you walk into a loading zone and start jumping immediately after, you can store the transition. So, that means you can continue jumping around to get to a specific location on the map. Stop jumping, Mario will activate the loading zone, and he'll fall out of the world and then flow back up into the world in a different spot. This is used a lot in speedruns to skip important dialogues that had inevitably make the game harder to play. Now, there were a lot of bugs that can actually crash Paper Mario because as one of the old sayings goes, everything crashes Paper Mario.
Really?
I'm not joking. There's actually a YouTuber who's made so many videos about how everything that can crash Paper Mario, it's literally called Everything Crashes Paper Mario.
And this game has often been compared to previous Mario RPG titles, Super Mario RPG. It was judged that Paper Mario is vastly superior to the Super Mario RPG. While IGN compared the game's simple plot unfavorably with the Super Nintendo NES game, an RPG fan claimed that some of Paper Mario's story was copied from it.
Clearly they were uninformed and are probably long gone by now. And if not, well, I apologize, but you probably regret making that statement now that you've seen just how successful Paper Mario actually was.
Paper Mario Passing Your Door is getting a remake, by the way.
Yes, so why do people compare Paper Mario to Super Mario RPG?
Because Paper Mario is an RPG-style game.
Well, here's the fun fact. Paper Mario was actually a project named Super Mario RPG 2. So it was actually originally made to be a sequel to Super Mario RPG, but inevitably got transferred over into a new project named Paper Mario.
That is a fun fact, and one that I did not know. GameSpot named Paper Mario the best Nintendo 64 game of 2001. It was runner-up for the publication's annual Best Role-Playing Game prize among console games.
Take a lucky guess who won.
Final Fantasy X. During the 5th Annual Interactive Achievement Awards, Paper Mario was nominated for the Console Role-Playing Award by the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences.
Now, let's get into something that's actually a bit more different. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Why is this game so specific? This is the only game in the entirety of the lifeline of Nintendo games, and I guess it's Microsoft games as well, to never get a confirmed sequel. Conker's Bad Fur Day has only been remade plentiful times before eventually being dropped altogether. Conker has never seen another game ever since Live and Reloaded.
And there were a couple of games that I'm going to catch heat for here in just a minute. GoldenEye 007. It was a huge seller for the N64 gaming console. I apologize to all of you that are about to be really, really mad at me, but I am not a first-person shooter kind of guy, so I did not like it. I didn't care for playing GoldenEye.
I never played it, so I don't have an opinion.
I've seen speedruns, but overall the game looks kind of boring, but it did give light to some of SMG4's favorite characters.
And it was probably the greatest, first-person shooter of its time, but it just wasn't my thing. Another one that I'm going to catch some flack for, being a Poke geek as I am.
Pokemon Stadium.
Not Pokemon Stadium, because I rather enjoyed that one, but Pokemon Snap.
Snappy Snap.
Snap came out on the N64. I did not care for it because I enjoyed the overall battle system and catching of the regular Pokemon games. And this one you were just taking pictures of.
I thought you were going to say you loved it.
No, I did not.
Well, to be fair, this one was actually extremely different, and not a lot of people liked it, but it actually gave Professor Oak's official voice.
It did
However,
it did get a remake though.
Yeah, and it's gotten a sequel since. And, it's great for those people that enjoy that version, but for me, it just wasn't my favorite. I prefer the regular standard Pokemon games,
like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Red.
Yeah, all of the standard titles I love, but the Snap thing just didn't sit with me right.
I do not have any fun facts for this. I'm just gonna say that it was the first ever Pokemon game to include voice acting.
Next up on his list,
Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil was more famously played on PlayStation, I'll be completely honest. I don't feel like Nintendo was a Resident Evil type of system. I don't think Nintendo makes those kind of games typically, and it was a third-party release, but having said that, it's just not their style. It's not the fun, lighthearted gaming that Nintendo players are used to.
Fun fact, Nintendo has actually had quite a few releases of Resident Evil on their titles. However, they're most famously known for Nintendo 3DS releases, or infamously known.
They also had several Star Wars games, StarCraft, Star Fox. They had a Spider-Man game. I wasn't real big on it, but, at the time, I wasn't real big on the N64 to begin with because it changed so many things about how I loved playing games. And it became more complicated, more complex with more buttons to push and more things to have to think about. And at the time, I was just into playing fun games. That's all I wanted, was a little bit of fun. I didn't care about reality, realism within. It was just playing the games.
Now, while we are running short on time, we're gonna make the most of what a little time we do have. So let's speed run the next few things that we have to talk about.
We have 6 minutes.
All right, go for it.
Alrighty, so a lot of these games that you actually see on the Nintendo 64 have either A, never seen another release since, or B, their project was moved over to the Nintendo GameCube. Now, the disk drive, it failed because nobody wanted it. However, it did actually have quite a few new interesting games on it, and that were only released in Japan, and which were actually just as ports of different types of games. One of them being the Legend of Zelda port that allowed you, the player, to create your own little avatar and play the game as special live events happen. Now, this title was really just called The Legend of Zelda IT or something like that. And And there was no story, you just had to play the game and beat it in your own little time. And nowadays the servers are shut down, so there isn't much to say about it. Nintendo has never been famous for their online services, but nowadays they are. But back then, they didn't do anything online. So this was actually a new thing for them, and honestly, it ended up paying off in its own little manner.
And as we aforementioned, it had Ocarina of Time and its successor, Majora's Mask.
Now, Majora's Mask. This is actually the sequel to Ocarina of Time, and it takes place directly after Link warns Princess Zelda about how Ganondorf's first intentions, and he ends up being locked up for quite a few years. Now, Link ends up going in search of Navi to figure out where she went, and as a result, comes across Skull Kid, who ends up taking Epona after scaring Link, taking his ocarina, and eventually trapping him in Termina, to which he has to collect all kinds of masks to inevitably save everyone and stop the moon from crashing into Termina. But once he does, as he returns to a Hyrule that is not the same.
So, that is it for us on the N64. Be sure to join us next week when we get into the next system, which was the GameCube.
My favorite.
And of course, we'll include some references to the Game Boy Advance, because this actually played a huge role in the GameCube.
And if you would like to find our other channels, we have tons of them: YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, you name it, we got it. You can find it all at toucheproductions.com. You can also just look us up on those platforms: ACMS Gaming, CoolDan1211, myself, Super Shay Tutorials, and our other partner in crime, Shay Girl.
Yes?
And, of course, Super Shay Gaming.
There we go. Final thoughts, Super Shay.
Thank you all for joining us here tonight. We love y'all, and we came out just to have some fun doing a podcast, talk about what we love doing, and we hope you're enjoying it.
Final thoughts, ACMS.
We really appreciate you coming over here to waste a good hour of your life just listening to video game facts.
Final thoughts for me, Moth.
Have a phenomenal awesome night, y'all.
Bozini. Huh?
What'd you say?
I said nothing.
Say my word.
No.
Have a phenomenal awesome day.